Hey guys, it's Wes here. Welcome back. This video will be a follow-up to my beginner's guide video. I'm going to be talking about the runes here. Pretty much up to mid-game, from beginning to mid-game, just to give everybody, a little idea of what you should be doing with your runes and what I would recommend and what I've done with my runes personally. If you're past mid-game, past Giants B10, you probably know what to do. If anyone's curious, I am at Giants B10. Currently getting a 92 to 93% success rate, around there, at a 2-minute 15 to 2-minute 30-second clear speed, and so that's where I'm at. So my rune recommendations won't go past dragons. They probably will only go to Giants B10, because at that point the general tips I give you should give you some idea of what runes you should and shouldn't keep and put on certain monsters. So we'll hop right into this. Here's my monster page. I'm going to hop into here real quick, and we're going to talk about the Magic Knight, which is the gift from Com to us that you get very early on. An awesome monster, an awesome farming monster. She is an attack-based monster, and we're going to talk about some rune progressions. Early on, you are given 3 stages that will give you all the essential runes for monsters that you'll need pretty much. Of course, your runes will go all the way up to Revenge runes and Endure runes and all sorts of different runes here, but you shouldn't really be worrying about those. Before your level like 20 to 25, the only rune sets you need to know are the Energy set from Garen Forest, the Fatal set from Mount Sis, and the Blade set from Kabir runes. So in terms of Magic Knight, you really want to be getting these Fatal runes. These Fatal runes are going to increase her damage output, and let her actually help you clear scenario. So what I would recommend is getting into clearing up to about Mount White Ragan, or you could just stay on Mount Sis the entire time, and you want to get your Magic Knight up to 4-star max level. Once you get to that point, you want to go into Mount Sis hard, and you want to start clearing and looking for those 3- and 4-star Fatal runes. And that's really going to give Magic Knight a huge damage boost from when she's a lower level. You could get about plus 300, plus 320 if you go on a attack build. And what I mean by that is you want to focus on your percentage runes. A lot of times I'll go ahead and clear a run with Mount Sis here just to maybe give you an idea of what runes you could encounter. A lot of times you can get 2-star rune drops that are of a higher grade but don't give you the stats that you want. And the problem with a lot of runes that I see on monsters of people who haven't been informed properly or are just starting to get into the game, so nobody's really given them any idea of what to do. I'll see a lot of flat runes, and flat runes are something you want to avoid by like the plague for the most part. We didn't get one here, for example, but slot 2, 4, and 6 on every monster should have a percentage rune, unless your slot 2 is speed, because speed will never come in the form of a percentage except for the set bonus on a Swift rune page, and a 4 set of Swift runes. So what you wanna always aim for a percentage if you can, unless that monster is running speed in slot 2, on slot 2, 4, and 6, because those percentages are going to do a lot more for you than a flat stat. So like a flat stat in slot 2, for example, on a monster, even as a 5 or 6-star flat attack rune, would only give you about 100, maybe a little bit more than 100 bonus attack. Here I have a maxed out 6-star Fatal rune. It's pretty decent for my Julie here. It's 63% attack. And her base attack being 834, which that percentage scales off of, she's getting, roughly 450 to 500 bonus attack just because of this one rune. Whereas if you had a slot 6 flat rune that was 6-star, you'd only be getting about 100. So you can see that there's a marginal difference in the amount of stats you are getting. So for the most part, you want percentage runes in there, and you want to, plus them. So now we're going to talk about sets for specific monsters. So Magic Knight is similar to Julie in many ways, in that they're both attack-based monsters that want to deal damage. And if you're curious about the scaling on your abilities of your monsters, I would recommend you go to the Summoner's War wiki page. There, you could find all the percentage damage per attack ratings that you want to see on your monsters. So you could essentially see how much damage your ability is going to be doing, at what skill level, per how much attack you have and crit rate and all that. But the first thing you generally want to worry about doing on your attack-based monsters is getting likely a fatal set, because most of your attackers are going to be based on attack damage. So you want to get a fatal set so you get that additional 35% attack, which is huge. See, it's about half of my slot 6 rune, a little bit more than half of my slot 6 rune, which is a very good, a very high percentage. It's a plus 15, so the max amount of percentage attack you can get out of a rune on the base stat is on this rune. So the set is going to be give a huge bonus, and you want to worry about getting the set bonus, because early on that's going to be better than some of your runes. As you can see, I have a 5-star rune here, and it's only at 37%, even though it is plus 12. So the stat bonus from having the fatal set is almost as good as a plus 12 5-star attack percentage rune on slot 2. So the sets are super, super important in early game, because this is not a rune that you're going to be able to obtain very, very easily, early on in the game. So you want to make sure you have that specific set, and you want to make sure you have percentage runes, and you just want to put them on a triple attack build. And when somebody references the runes you should use, such as saying attack, 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 or attack crit rate attack, or attack crit damage attack, what they're talking about are the slots 2, 4, and 6, because those are the main only main stats that are going to change when you have a new rune page. The slot 1 rune will always be flat attack on the main stat. The slot 3 rune will always be flat defense, and the slot 5 rune will always be HP, regardless of the rune set, regardless of how many stars it has. Those will always be the flat stats that come on there. So when someone is telling you, this is how you should run a unit, this, that, and the other, they're talking about slots 2, 4, and 6. And what I'm saying is, if you start your Magic Knight out on a Fatal Blade or Fatal Energy build, you'll be getting stats so she could either survive or have higher crit rate from the Blade substats, or from the Blade set. And you want to go attack percentage on slots 2, 4, and 6. That way you'll have the highest attack possible, so your Magic Knight will do consistent, decent amount of damage. Because most likely your build early game will not have the amount of crit damage or the amount of crit rate you would need to run a different slot 4. And so, the options you have are, essentially for an attacker you want either speed or attack percent in slot 2. You could run attack percent, crit rate, or crit damage in slot 4. And you could run, most likely you're going to be running attack percent in slot 6. Just to have the optimal damage. And these are my Julie stats as a result of this set, and I think it's fairly decent. She's almost getting 200% of her base attack in her additional attack. So she's getting 1,500 additional attack, and her base attack is 800. So her stats are all right. You can see she has 84% critical rate, which means 84% of the time she's going to be hitting a critical hit. And when she does hit a critical hit, it means that her critical damage is going to increase that hit and give her an additional 157% damage. And so that means when she crits, she's going to be doing 257% of the damage she would have normally done, which is pretty huge. So over time, as you get better runes, as you can see here, I have runes that give me critical rate in the substats, which helps me hit a critical hit more often. And then I have the critical damage percentage in slot 4, so that I can increase the damage that occurs when I hit a critical hit. I'm sorry if I'm getting ahead of what some people might understand, but generally your progression for an attacker is going to go, you're going to have attack percent in slot 2, 4, and 6. And after that, eventually you want to turn into a critical rate build, where you have attack percent slot 2, critical rate in slot 4, and attack percent in slot 6. And when you do that, you want to get your critical rate about 84, 85, or up to 80% at least, so you could constantly be getting critical hits. And eventually, when your runes for your attacker are good enough where your substats have enough critical rate to at least have 75% critical rate to just be consistent enough, you can start putting a crit damage slot in slot 4, so you could greatly increase your damage. Of course, you don't want to worry about rushing into those other builds if you don't need to. I've seen ridiculous end game builds on monsters like Soha. I'll show you here. She's got very high scaling off of attack. The water nine-tailed fox, yes, the water nine-tailed fox, and her third ability will still hit very, very, very hard with a triple attack build. So you never want to worry about rushing your monsters onto runes that they're not ready to be, used or built on, because then you might sacrifice stats that you don't want to. And so you can keep that triple attack build for as long as you really need to. And generally speaking, your Magic Knight early game is going to be your main attacker, unless you get something else very lucky from a scroll. I got my Julie very early on in the game. She was my very first natural 4-star. And so she replaced my Magic Knight very early on and did some good damage to help me clear the scenario. But Magic Knight can do about the same for you if you build her correctly and give her all sorts of love. Next monster we're going to be talking about, that I talked about in the beginner guide, is the Beladian, the Light Inagami. He is very, very useful. I still use him today. I use him in my Giants B10 team. And he's very irreplaceable to me, because even though I have other healer options, he's very consistent and provides a lot of things that my team needs. And so I talked a lot about focus in the beginner's guide, and the focus of an early game player should generally be making a team for Giants B10. The team I would recommend for Giants B10 would be either Veramos, the Dark Ifrit, which you can get from Fusion, or the Water Garuda. The Water Garuda is a great cleanser as well, Konamaya. He removes dots with his third skill, which is very useful. That's basically what you need for Giants, is to not remove dots. That's for dragons. You want to remove the defense break that the Giants boss applies. You want an attack bar booster, preferably Bernard. He is very easy to obtain. You could find him in Tamor Desert. You want your Beladian for healing capabilities, as well as the beneficial effect removal, which will mean he can remove the defense break that the giant has. And you want a damage dealer aside from that, and a buffer. And so your buffer can be the Wind Pixie. I would highly recommend her, Shannon. She provides a glancing hit, which means that there's a chance that the giant won't deal tons of damage, or the boss won't deal tons of damage to you. She's got an attack speed slow, which is very, very useful, as well as an attack power boost and a defense boost for all of your allies, which helps a lot. And of course, you could put that with another support unit, such as the Light Vagabond Darien, to reduce damage you take. You can put that with a damage dealer, so that you increase your damage output on the giant, reducing the amount of time that you will be there, and making your runs a little bit faster and a little bit smoother. But aside from the giants talk, we'll talk about how to rune your next unit, Beladian. I have been talking about the Fatal set, the Energy set, and the Blade set a lot. This is one unit you do want to put on the Swift set. The Swift set is found in Mount Ragan White, or Mount White Ragan. There you can find Swift runes, and Swift runes are going to help your Beladian, because as a healer, you want him to move as often as possible, meaning you want his speed to be very high. And the Swift set, the one set I mentioned in the beginner's guide, that does give you a percentage of speed, which is great. 25% speed is a lot. That is, at minimum for most units, 25 additional speed, since most units are about 100 speed, give or take a few speed on some units. But you want him to move as often as possible. So what you're going to want to run on something like Beladian is a speed or HP slot 2, HP percentage of course, an HP percentage slot 4, and an HP or defense percentage slot 6. Of course, the slot 2, 4, and 6 are all interchangeable except for the speed. You can find HP percentage or defense percentage in anywhere in slot 2, 4, or 6. I have paired this with an energy set. I would recommend you do the same, so that you can reach as high of an HP amount and as high of a defense percentage amount as you can, so that your Beladian can survive. And this will allow your Beladian to stay alive, so that he can actually heal your team. And when your Beladian is about 15,000, 16,000 HP, then you could worry a little bit more about speed and try to find speed substats in your runes. Here I have a very mediocre speed substats on some of these runes. Here I have nothing in slot 3, nothing in slot 4. I have a 12 speed in slot 5, 4 speed in slot 6, and then a 12 speed in slot 1. So my Beladian could definitely get a lot faster for my level and for where I'm at in the game. But you know, he's fast as I need him to be right now. But yes, generally you want him to have a high enough HP to survive, and then after you've worried about his HP percentage and his defense, you could worry about his speed so that he can go more often. After you worry about speed so that your Beladian is consistently healing your team, if you need more accuracy so he could remove beneficial effects off of the enemies, you can build that as well. Of course, you always want to get that in substats. I have some decent substats here. I have 18% in 3, 16% in 5, 11% in 4. I've got quite a few accuracy substats on these runes that really help my Beladian have enough accuracy for dragons. You don't need more than 45% for giants. You do not need to be worrying about that, at least because the Giants boss itself has 60% resistance. So 45% accuracy is the maximum effective accuracy against him. Of course, if you go higher than that, it's fine, but don't worry too much about going over 45. I would only worry about getting the HP and the speed as high as you need it for your dungeon team. Next, we're going to be talking about Bernard, another very obtainable unit. You get him from Tamor Desert. He's super useful. He's an attack bar booster. Mine has very bad runes right now. He has a decent amount of HP, a decent amount of accuracy, but his speed is very low. And I'm going to give the same tips for Bernard as I do for Beladian. You want him on a speed, HP build, swift, and preferably energy so that he has enough HP percentage to survive. Other than that, you want him to have a lot of speed substats if you can. You'd like him to be the fastest unit on your team so that he could consistently use his third skill, which will speed your entire team up. It's also nice to have some accuracy on him because then he could land his skill 2 and defense break the enemy and attack break the enemy so that the enemies deal less damage to you and you deal more damage to them. But accuracy, again, will take a backseat to speed and HP on this unit. Defense is not as big of a worry. Of course, you do want to hit about 800 defense for this unit to stay consistently strong. But if you build enough HP, you can get away with a little bit less defense and worry about speed as well after you've hit about 15,000 HP and about 800 defense. My next unit, I'll be talking about Shannon. My Shannon is not built the way yours should be built if you use her. Mine was on an HP percentage, defense percentage. The big thing for Shannon is at 5-star max, which is where most of your units will be when you really start to work on giants, or where they should be before you really start working on giants, is about 5-star. And her stats at 5-star are not the best, so you will have to build her kind of carefully. She's very finicky about the runes you give her because her base defense is very low, her base HP is extremely low. I will show you some other examples here. 5-star units, awakened 5-star units have, higher. This monster right here, Tark, is a natural 2-star monster. His HP is higher than Shannon. She's also a natural 2-star monster, but for a support monster, it's very hard to get her to survive without decent runes. I will see a lot of guides that tell you to build speed, HP, and accuracy on Shannon. I would definitely. I would be completely against that because then she most likely will not have the stats that she needs to survive. Accuracy is all right on Shannon, is not at all necessary, as even with her 2 abilities that can apply negative effects to the enemies, it is not worth it if she does not survive long enough to buff your team. And Shannon's main purpose in any dungeon team you bring her into is going to be to buff your team's attack and defense, mostly defense, so that your team does not die on the way to the boss. So what I would recommend is a triple energy set so that she has survivability. I would put her on two slots of HP percentage and 1 slot of defense percentage so that her defense could be about 800 and her HP percentage could be 12,000, hopefully, if you can get her there. I probably could with the runes I have, even at my 5-star runes. You would need to bring your runes up to plus 12 so that they provide enough of a stat bonus for her. Those are the main units I wanted to go over in terms of runing them. Veramos is runed similarly to how you would want to rune Konamaya, of course. Speed, HP, HP. Speed, HP, HP is typically going to be the support unit you build, like how you build your support unit early game. How I would recommend, of course, so that they have enough survivability to live through the waves and do what they need to do, but enough speed so that they can do what they're there for often enough so that your team still works out properly. And generally that's your Giants team. And I really wanted to get that out of the way before we really started talking super in depth about runes, because if you're not farming Giants B10, that's what you should be worried about. You should be worried about getting your way to Giants. Building a team that can do Giants for you automatically and clear it so you can get higher quality runes and progress further in the game. One thing I have failed to mention so far is what runes should you plus? How far should you plus your runes? So we're going to talk about that. Here I have, let's find a rune that is +1. So right here we have a +1 rune, or not plus at all, I'm sorry, rune. This is a 5-star rune. And the general rule of thumb that I would give to people is if a rune is 3-star, you can safely bring it up to +6, which means that you can go and you could power it up until it says +6 in front of it. And so you'd go ahead and do that. The first 3 times you plus a rune, it's guaranteed to get to +3, basically, without any failures. After that, the chance of failing slowly increases. And you may occasionally see some fails from +3 to +6. And I have occasionally, but for the most part I can do +4, +5, and +6 without any failures. Here we haven't failed at +4 and +5. We will occasionally fail getting to +6, as you see here. But as you power up a rune, I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to the substats, but the substats will increase by an amount based on the rating of the star every 3 times you plus the rune. So as you saw there, both times the substat increases went into the critical damage. And so a white rune, which means it has no substats that can increase, at +3 will gain a substat and turn into a green rune. Eventually a green rune will turn into a blue rune at +6, and a blue rune will turn into a purple rune at +9, and a purple rune will turn into an orange rune at +12, and at +12 that is the maximum amount of substat increases you are going to receive. So what do all these colors mean? Well, what they mean are if you start with a blue rune, you essentially start with 2 free substat increases, or here I knew for a fact that 2 more substat increases would go into critical rate or critical damage for sure. One of those 2 was going to get increased for sure, which is nice because then you know exactly what substats you're going to get on the rune. So I at least knew for a fact on a fatal rune that I was going to get a critical rate or critical damage increase, which is nice because that is exactly what you want on your attackers, is increased critical rate and critical damage so that they can increase their damage output. And at +9, of course, we're going to get another substat. We're going to gain another substat. One of these 2 will not increase anymore because they only had 2 to begin with. At +9, this rune will become purple, which means it will have a 3rd substat. And so I know a lot of people get caught up on the color of their rune, and oftentimes they're like, oh, I'm not going to keep a rune because it's not purple. Purple runes are better than white runes, right? It's like, well, not necessarily. It depends on the star grade of the rune. Here I got a very lucky roll. My +9 roll was into attack percentage, so it is another stat that I really do want on a fatal rune. This is a pretty decent 5-star rune. Will probably become it will probably be used on one of my lower monsters though, since for the most part my top tier monsters are being used for teams, and they need 6-star runes only. And so what the star rating means is essentially that there's going to be a difference between the amount of the base stat and the amount of substat increase you have potential to receive. And so right here I've got a great example. A +9 6-star Fatal Rune will give me +94 attack, but a +9 5-star Fatal Rune will only give me 78. And of course they have different substats here, so if I was going to choose between the two runes, I would most likely choose the 6-star rune, because for me right now, speed is a big factor when runing out my monsters. Because around where I am, if I want to have any competitive ability in arena, so that I become a rank higher than fighter, or so that I'm able to destroy monsters in guild wars, I need speed from my point in the game. But for the most part, this is a nice rune as well. It gives your monster some HP percentage and some attack, of course. It's really nice to have high speed substats if you can. It's not completely necessary on your attackers. For the most part, your Bernard, your Wind Griffin, will be increasing their attack bar so that they're able to move faster anyways. So I wouldn't worry too much. But if you can get a white 5-star rune, especially if it's percentage, that's when it really starts to come into play. Then I would choose that over a blue, a blue 4-star rune or 3-star rune. So that's about what I have to say about this. I should have, so yeah, here's another example right here. If you see, the difference in percentage is 12% between my 6-star percentage rune and my 5-star percentage rune. And regardless of if it's slot 2 or if it's slot 6, percentages are based on the star rating of the rune, not the slot specifically. And so your attack percentage here will go up by 12% by going to a 6-star rune rather than a 5-star rune. So when it comes to slots 2, 4, and 6, I would worry a little bit more about getting a higher star rated rune than getting necessarily the perfect subs. The subs on a rune would have to be very would have to really, like, the substats would have to be really good for me to choose a 5-star attack percentage rune for my Sigmaris over this one that I have here. As the substats on here are pretty nice. They give Sigmaris the stats he needs, and they help him deal the damage I want him to do, as well as having a 6-star attack percentage rune. So my attack percentage base stat is as high as that percentage stat could be for the main stat. And so what I'm trying to really nail in here is, if it's a slot 2, 4, or 6, I would choose the higher star rating over the better substats, so that your monster can have the stats that it needs to do what it needs to do, to have the damage output, to have the HP, etc. And so you can reach those stats better. And so what you really want to try to do when you're farming your scenarios is you want to get to those hell stages, you want to level up your monsters, and you want to go for those 4-star percentage runes if you can. If you can get, there's a slim chance you can get a 5-star percentage rune from scenario now. It is a lot. It's pretty rare, so you'd have to stay there for a while. But it is possible in the each respective scenario to get a percentage rune. Like, for example, if I wanted a 5-star attack percentage rune, I would come to Mount Sis and I would farm 2, 4, or 6 until I received that attack percentage rune. I would say you only need 4-star percentage runes to really clear to Famon and do what you need to do. Before you move into Giants, my personal recommendation, if I were to start the game again, would be to get mostly 5-star runes on my monsters before heading into Giants B7 or 8 to start farming for higher quality runes, such as rare or hero runes, the blue or the purple runes, so that they have better substats for the monsters, and do what I need to do. And that's probably about it for the section where I finished talking about the beginner runes. Of course, there are awkward units in here. Luer is a support unit, and typically for a support unit, you're going to prioritize speed, HP, survivability, so that they can do what they need to do earlier on in the game. And then accuracy is a plus for them. You would want to get that through substats. But something like Luer, the place I use him is in arena. So of course I have an accuracy slot 6, which I would not like to have there. I'd like to actually have an attack percent slot 6 and have accuracy through substats. But it's more important for me to have the high accuracy, so his third skill, the AoE defense break and attack bar reduction can land consistently, so that I can get off my damage and clear an enemy arena defense. Other awkward units include people such as Bulldozer. He's the Fire Frankenstein. He is a defense-based attacker, even though it says he is an HP percentage monster. You could check out his skills, and his skills scale proportional to his defense and how his max defense compares to the target's defense. And so for a unit like him, to rune him as an attacker, you would want guard runes if you could. I do not have very good guard runes currently, but you would want something very similar to the attacker, except in the form of defense. So you'd want a triple guard set, and you'd want to put him on defense, defense, and eventually put him on defense crit rate defense, and then defense crit damage defense, when you can support enough crit rate to switch to crit damage. But again, it's much like an attacker, much like any other attacker build, where you would have the percentage of stat that increases his damage in slot 2 and 6, and the crit damage or crit rate or an additional damage slot in slot 4. And the same goes with a warbear unit or a health based damage dealer such as Ramagas, the wind warbear. His damage scales off of his max HP on his first skill, and his third skill based on the amount of HP he's missing. So for someone like him, you would probably just go HP percentage in slot 2, 4, and 6. And for early game runes, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much the guidelines you want to follow. Support units you want on Swift Energy or Swift Focus if you can, and put them on Speed, HP, with defense and accuracy substats to get your accuracy as high as you can, as well as speed if you can afford to. Your attacker is generally going to be Fatal Blade with attack crit rate attack, and attack crit damage attack if you can afford enough crit rate to that unit. Other than that, when it comes to mid-game, if anyone is curious on transitioning your runes, or transitioning your team from giants to dragons, what you're going to need is a lot of speed. If you do not have a unit Vertihil, I know this is becoming a little bit more of a dungeon guide, but runes and dungeons are basically intertwined in a sense that without the dungeon you couldn't have the runes, and you're getting the runes so that you can progress in the dungeons. So they're pretty much one and the same of needs and needs for. So Vertihil right here basically reduces your need for speed in things like dragons, as well as Trial of Ascension, which is basically where you're going to be going after Giants B10. You're going to have your choice. But what he does is every time he crits, you're increasing the attack bar of allies by 20%, which is a huge amount. Because if you look at your Wind Griffin Bernard, his skill that's only up every 3 turns once you have maxed him out, only gives you a 30% attack bar increase, which very early game is very nice. But a Vertihil is giving that to you 3 times as fast, or I guess twice as fast, because within 3 turns that it takes for the Wind Griffin to be off of cooldown on his 3rd skill, Vertihil is attacked 3 times. So Vertihil is essentially doing twice what Bernard does, which is great. And so when teamed up with someone like Spectra, an attack bar reducer, you are getting ridiculous amounts of turns, over the enemy, so that you're essentially stopping the dragons or the units that you're against from moving. And so if you don't have a unit like a Vertihil, and you really need a lot of speed for Giants B10 runs to be successful, you're going to need a lot of speed on your units. And as you see here, my Beladian, is decently well sped up. He's 192 speed. I would like him to be about 215 speed. I could do that with substats eventually. I would have to farm a lot more giants and plus upgrade a lot more of my runes, so I'd need a lot of mana for that. And his accuracy is 67% because that's where it ended up after the substats, and I wanted it as high as it could be to ensure that I land the strip and the defense break on the dragon consistently. Other units that are sped up pretty well, my Veramos, he is currently 207 speed. My Spectra used to be 250 speed. I had to slow him down to be speed tuned with the Belladon here. You can see his speed is 192 speed, while 191 speed, while Belladon's speed is 192. Almost is basically perfectly speed tuned so that Spectro will always go right after Belladon, to ensure that I can just output high enough damage with my second skill, dealing maximum damage to the dragon. Of course, if I sped up my Belladon, I would allow Spectra to be faster, and if Spectra is faster, that also means I could slow down the enemy more often. And so by speeding up my entire team, I'm speeding up the efficiency of my team. And so as you're transitioning into something like dragons, your units are going to be, you're going to have a higher HP and defense percent requirement on your substats and your main stats. You're going to have higher accuracy requirements, and you're going to need a lot more speed than you had previously. As someone like Westoreos, my Westoreos is not efficient enough at cleansing off the dots from the dragons, so he would need about 220, 230 speed in order to do that correctly. Again, something that you could reach. You could reach this with the buildings, definitely. That's why right now I'm working on my Sky Tribe Totem, because 5-7% speed increase is huge. That's an extra 7 speed on average for most units. So it's definitely a huge increase, which definitely will help out the consistency of your team, your runs, everything like that. And so as you progress into dragons, you want high quality 5 and 6 star runes to get the maximum stats. As you can see here, I really do wish my HP percentage runes were 6 starred. I did have to plus 15 this 5 star rune. It's decent enough where I'm fine with it. It has an 11% accuracy substat. But for the most part, you want 6 star runes if you can afford to have them, so that your units can have the maximum amount of survivability. As you can see on my units like Sigmaris, who I bring into dragons, he is afforded a very nice Violent Blade set, completely 6 star runes now. He is definitely my best runed unit. Very happy to have him there. But these 6 star runes are almost essential for him to be able to do enough damage on the Violent set. As opposed to being on a fatal set where his requirements would be lower. You can see a huge gap in between, the attack of Julie and the attack of Sigmaris. Julie actually has, for her base attack level, higher stats on her fatal set than Sigmaris has on the violent set. In terms of attack, crit rate, and crit damage, she has higher percentages, of course, because she is getting that really nice set bonus from fatal, and she is on a 5 star slot 2 that is not plus to 15. And a 5 star slot 4 crit damage rune. So I mean, her runes of course are a little bit more impressive than the violent runes on Sigmaris, but they are not 6 star runes. So the stats I get on Sigmaris are almost comparable to Julie on a violent set. And so as you really break into dragons, eventually you want to convert your units like Westoreos, Belladon into onto violent sets with about the same stats. You want basically the same stats or better on violent than you have on swift. Otherwise, it's really not worth transferring the runes over. Like I said at the just the same as beginners, you don't want to push off of one rune build for your team until you can afford to run another. So don't feel forced to go onto violent, because if you go into violent too early, your monster's not going to do what it needs to do consistently. My Belladon was on violent for a long time, only 170 speed. It was not good enough for dragons. I changed my Belladon back to swift. Of course, I put my violent runes on a unit that is more playful. It's my Chisun, who is not seriously runed yet, but has some fairly decent runes that used to be on Belladon. But she does not need to have the same consistency as my Belladon, so I put him back on swift. I gave him all the HP, accuracy, and speed I could possibly afford to him, while still keeping my Westoreos well runed. Of course, my Bernard took a hit, but now that my focus is primarily dragons, I focused all of my best runes onto my dungeon team, and I'd recommend everybody does the same. If you see you have a really good rune set on a monster that you don't use in your dungeon team, and your dungeon team is not performing the way you want it to, I'd recommend either wait for free rune removal, or go ahead and use the mana and switch your best runes on your dungeon team so that you can consistently get better runes than the runes you have, and upgrade your monsters so that they all have the runes that they want. So I hope this video was helpful. I know it was pretty long-winded. I know that it lasted a while. I wanted to go really in depth on this because It's one of the really big problems I see a lot of people, asking in chat like, oh, what's wrong with my dragon team? Oh, why can't I get Conqueror 3? Why aren't I Guardian 2 with my 150 speed Bernard? Well, it's because your runes aren't good enough. I'm sorry to offend people if I do offend them with that, but honestly, it's like if you're having problems, it's probably because your monsters aren't leveled or your runes just aren't good enough to do what you're trying to do. So focus on your dungeon teams. Think about the core builds and don't rush on any sets that you're not ready to put on your monsters. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, I'd appreciate your feedback. Go ahead and like it if you really enjoyed this series, and if you want to watch more of my videos, feel free to subscribe and click more videos at the end. Thanks for watching, guys. See you later.